Sue English and I'm a GP in Hampton. What I'm doing in my life generally with what I do with Timor and what I do with my work is advocacy and mentorship, and that is the vision of IWF Australia, and it really mirrors and marries well with what I'm doing in my life. So I feel like I have a role in the organisation at this age where I've had a lot of life experience, and I feel like I've got a lot to give, and I also feel like I've got a lot to learn. So in 2012, a girlfriend and I went to Timor, and we went up to the village of Venilale and were introduced to Sister Carolina, who is the nun who's also a nurse who runs the clinic in Venilale where I now work. And at the end of our afternoon clinic with all the villagers, she said, "Oh, Sister Letizia wants you to see 4 of the orphans. You know, they've got runny noses." And so these 4 little scraggly urchins come in the door. The other 3 girls, they were fine, maybe needed some antibiotics or, you know, a check on their chest with their coughs. And then Margareta came up to me, and through the interpreter was like, "Oh, what's your name, Margareta, and how old are you?" 13. And, you know, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Oh, I've got a runny nose and I've got a cough." "How long have you had the cough?" "Oh, 2 years." "Oh, okay." "And the runny nose?" "Oh, a week." "Okay." And I said, "All right." So looked in her ears, looked in her throat, checked her temperature, and I said, "Right, now I want to have a listen to your chest." And as I lifted up her top and turned her around, what I noticed was her back was completely deformed. So instead of having a beautiful straight back like all the other girls, her back was like this at the middle of the chest level. And I was like, "What can you tell me about your back? I mean, you know, I'm not interested in your cough anymore. Tell me what's going on with your back." And she said, "Oh, you know, I've always had that." And I said, "Well, have you seen any other doctors?" And I called in Sister Carolina and I said, "Have any of the volunteer doctors who've come through over the years, has she been to any doctors in Timor? Has she, you know?" And they said, "Oh yeah, she's seen doctors, but they all say it's too hard. They say there's nothing can be done in Timor, so it's all too hard and it's better just to leave it alone. So we don't do anything. She's not in any pain. That's how it is. That's her life." And I just thought, I don't know about that. You know, I don't know. Really, to advocate for her, there were the nuns, and I have met her auntie since, but there was no one else. She really had to be involved in making those decisions. So that's what we did. I brought her x-rays back and I asked the question of the right person, and he said, "I think we should try." So the conflict for me was with Margareta was, are we doing the right thing? You know, taking an orphan girl out of her safe environment, taking her completely out of her comfort zone to be able to try and do massive surgery, which is really risky. I mean, there was a 10% risk that she would end up being paraplegic. Could I send her back to Timor as a paraplegic in a wheelchair on dirt-strewn roads and no facilities for the disabled? How do you do that? You know, so it was really, there was a lot of conflict, and my husband and I spent a lot of time talking about that, and he would question me. He says, "Are you sure you're doing the right thing?" Even though she knew all the risks and we had spelt it out to her, she wanted it. She wanted it, and I was going to do it for her. Yeah. So then it's like, I need x-rays in Australia, so it's right, okay, next step. So we got her a passport, had to get a birth certificate, got a passport. I bought her a flight to Darwin with one of the nuns, hired a beach house on the beach and a car, got the radiology at Darwin Private and Darwin Public Hospitals to donate their services to do x-rays, MRIs and CAT scans. I called the senior paediatrician on Friday afternoon and said, "Do you think you could see a little girl from East Timor who I happen to have up here this afternoon?" So she saw her, did a workup, we did the bloods, we found out she had TB of the spine, and that was what was causing the collapse of her spine. 5 of her vertebrae had been destroyed by tuberculosis, and when she started walking, her spine collapsed, and that's how she'd remained. We then applied to Children's First Foundation here in Melbourne and Cabrini Hospital to take her on. And Children's First just did not blink an eyelid. We're on her case. We will support you. We had the surgeon, she had me, we had Children's First Foundation, and then we worked with Cabrini, with the humanitarian outreach program of Cabrini. We had to get 2 hospital policies changed at board level for them to agree to her surgery. We achieved that. So we really did the whole journey over her whole campaign over 2 years was incredible, and we just kicked goals and never expected to do that, but in the end it worked out, which was good. The day we took her home was incredible. She walked into the orphanage after being here for 10 months, and she was greeted with screams of delight and excitement about her being home. We had this massive party. All of a sudden, all the relatives came out of the woodwork, and we had this big party and celebration for her being home. So now that she's home, she's back at school. She has grown another 2 centimetres in the last month and put on another 2 kilos. She's thriving. She can speak English. She is looking forward to continuing her education, and she's had experience now of Australian hospitals and Timorese hospitals, and she would like to be a nurse or a teacher and have the opportunity to help others the way she's been helped. That's what she said. For her, she says, I look like a normal girl. I look like everybody else. So that's it really. Yeah.